Okay, what I'm about to show you is it's a gameplay of it's a similar deck to this um blue black Murktide deck that I have. I cannot afford the $90 for each copy of Oculus. So I'm running it without an Oculus, but um, this is actually an updated version of the deck you're about to see. The deck that I had, I was actually running one Kaito. What is the full name? I was running one Kaito, Bane of Nightmares, and it ended up working out really well in this video. Also, there might have been a few other things that were a little different than this, but this is the current build that I'm using. The best I've been able to do with it is 4-1, but most of the time it's getting like 3 and 2, which I feel is pretty good with Oculus being so much better than this. I usually lose the Oculus matchups. I was winning them for a while, but I think something they've changed, maybe adding more spell snares to most of their lists, have made it a little bit more difficult for me to manage the Oculuses coming out. Yeah, but this gameplay I'm about to show you is against a Domain Zoo, I believe is what it's called. Let's see. Yeah, I 2-0'd him, and the first game, I believe both games, but the first game he starts off immediately with the Leyline of the Guild Pact, which usually is a really good start. I know this isn't like a exactly super tier 1 deck right now, but I tend to struggle against it sometimes. Yeah, so I did have a really lucky start too with 2 fatal pushes right off the bat, and counterspell and subtlety for Draco or Flage or anything else they're going to play early on. So I start off immediately with a Psychic Frog, something they sort of have to answer, and I held up subtlety to prevent the round 2 or the turn 2 Scion of Draco, which they didn't have. They had a Territorial Kavu, which I held up subtlety, just waited for my turn to fatal push it. Especially since I had a 3rd land, I could keep up counterspell for next turn. So they just pass here. I guess they didn't have anything, or they were respecting my counters. Here is a great position to be in. I have 4 lands open and a subtlety. So whatever they play next is going to give me a 3/3 threat for the next turn. Which here it's going to be Flage, and I do subtlety it. I might have held it up for when they had it in the graveyard if I didn't have the 4 mana. This is when Preordained is just the best type of draw. So I'm still holding up 4 mana. It gives me the option to Sink into Stupor and Fatal Push, or Counterspell, if need be. So Flage comes out again. I decide to Counterspell it, holding up the Sink into Stupor for later. Because I know when they cast it from the graveyard, I can just send it back to their hand. Also, here I draw Kaito, and I do consider using it on the subtlety here, but I decide against it because I need to hold up Sink for the next turn. Even though I could potentially Fatal Push a Flage later on, but I just don't know I can do that yet, so. And he kills my subtlety, I let it happen, keep the Sink and Stupor up. Flage is my biggest problem right now. And he knows I have something, so he holds off. And here is a great draw. So this is where I've been finding Kaito to be a really good card. Kaito, whatever it is. You wouldn't think it would be great with Orcish Bowmaster, but from what I've found, if you cast an Orcish Bowmaster on their turn, attack with both, even if you lose one to maybe a blocker that they may have, you can return one of them to your hand and replace it with Kaito. And in the best case scenario, which you're about to see, you can return Orcish Bowmaster itself to your hand and reuse its cast effect. later on, or its enter the battlefield effect. And he casts his own Orcish Bowmaster here, which is not really a bad thing for me because I have an Orcish Bowmaster, which is like the best solution for another Orcish Bowmaster. So I let him hit me for 2. I go to instep, so he doesn't cast Flage in his second main, even though I had enough mana for sync. So I kill his Orcish Bowmaster here. Now, Counterspell is an amazing draw because now I actually have 2 full-on counters up, or I have Kaito on the attack and Counterspell up, which is the main thing that I have right now. So basically, this is what you're going to see. I'm going to replace Orcish Bowmaster here with Kaito. Do a lot of extra damage, and I'm able to Surveil 2 and find another land for potentially Sink into Stupor or Counterspell and Fatal Push. And that's actually huge because I have a Polluted Delta out. And I can actually let Flage resolve at some point now and kill it with Fatal Push. So he Lightning Bolts my Kaito. I'm not worried about it. So I think I decide to, Counterspell this here. Then I main phase an Orcish Bowmaster to kill their token, start doing some more damage. They use Prismatic Ending on my token because they're afraid of damage at this point, I guess. And here is something interesting. I return it to their hand, which means that they can definitely cast it next turn, and I don't have an out for that. But I still have the way of killing it, and I draw another counterspell, which is actually pretty insane luck. So obviously they're going to cast it again. I let it resolve. And letting it resolve is probably the best decision of this entire match because they have Scion of Draco. Because Flage is basically, at this point, it was a Lightning Helix. So I just took 3 damage, they gained 3 life, which is good at this point in the game because they were low life, but countering it was not necessary. And again, I have removal for it when it enters the battlefield. I do not have removal for Scion of Draco because I believe it gives it hexproof. Itself hexproof. Yeah. And yeah. So that was probably the best decision of the entire match to hold up counterspell. Here I draw a pretty bad draw, but I keep it in hand as a bluff, kind of. They don't have anything. Here I draw Murktide, so I can start winning the game, as long as they don't have another ley line. Okay, another Draco. So they can gain more life from blocking with it, but at this point they cannot deal with my Murktide. So they block, allow Scion to die. I think they had to. Yeah, they had to. And then they cast Ragavan, dashed. Sort of like a last-ditch effort, but I'm able to stop that quickly. If they had more stuff in their graveyard, I probably wouldn't have done that, so I could save it for Flage, but... And then I draw another Murktide, and there's no way they can... Even if they draw a Prismatic Ending, or a Ley Line at this point, it's not going to win them the game. Okay, so that was game 1. A lot of good draws that game, but also I felt like I played pretty well, holding up Counterspell in certain spots where I could have used it. And then the second game, I believe they start with Leyline again. I could be wrong. Yeah, they do. 2 ley lines, which is actually, I wouldn't have kept, honestly, but first turn Ragavan. Keep a Psychic Frog on top. because I know they have a lot of removal for. And honestly, initially, I was pretty worried about this game because they have a way of producing mana, and I don't really have a way of stopping their threat until turn 3, at least their turn 3, and yeah, I don't have any counters other than subtlety, which is a pretty good counter, I guess. I can use it against Draco, which they could potentially put out next turn. Yeah. Here they use a Draco, and that's exactly what I do. Use subtlety on it. Subtlety is amazing for Draco. So here I choose against using Psychic Frog to main phase an Orchestra Master. Some people might think that was a bad decision. I liked it just because I prefer that not on the battlefield. They could play around me attacking with Psychic Frog and attacking on my turn to make mana. And also I can do the combo next turn with Kaito. Which I think I didn't do because of Consigned to Memory here. That's right. Because if they have another Draco, that's probably my worst fear at this point. But actually, what I should do is note that they still only have 1 land. They just got another. So earlier when they attacked with Ragavan, they were hoping to get another treasure so that they could recast Draco again. But they had not pulled another land, so that was their literal only option to cast Draco. I forgot to mention this. So earlier when they made a treasure, or were trying to create a treasure token, it was to create Draco, which they put on top with subtlety. So I played around the fact that they put it on top by keeping open Consigned to Memory for when they do get a land. Or yeah, since they got a land here. Okay, so they're going to attempt to cast Draco, and I believe they might just concede after that. Yes. I honestly would like to go back. Just a real quick. So you see here on their turn 2, they don't put down a land. They use Ragavan. Maybe, yeah, they're going to use the treasure and cast Draco. So they subtlety it. They put it on top, which probably was the biggest mistake they made this game. But they were hoping to make another mana with Ragavan here. But I had Orcish Bowmaster. So this is why, watching it back, I forgot how, this was the other day when I played this game, but I'm pretty sure the reason I Orcish Bowmastered is because that was their only way of making another mana on their turn 3 to cast another Draco. So it sets them back an entire turn of not being able to draw land, not being able to create treasure. And here, Consigned to Memory is just the biggest draw, preventing them from ever casting Scion, and that's why I didn't decide to Kaito. Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. I have some other videos I'll probably be posting soon. This was a really good matchup. These were both losses to, one of them was in, I think it was Mardu Energy, but this is also a Mardu Energy game where I went 2-0. Or I think this was Boros Energy. So yeah, as you can see, I don't have the best record, but sometimes I do well. And I'm also using kind of a tier 2 deck at this point. I did have Kaito in it, but I took it out. It just wasn't always working. Sometimes it does great things, but like as you saw in that matchup, it did pretty well. But a lot of the time, it does not. Also, I've been experimenting with only engineered explosives, no toxic deluge. Still using 2 Pithing Needle because I still think Belcher's a really good deck. It's just a lot of people aren't using it right now, and also a lot of people don't like Surgical Extraction. I think Surgical is amazing, especially against Boros. Once they put Flage in the graveyard, you just take that away. It's their biggest threat, at least now. It's harder for them to put out a lot of small creatures because there's no Amped Raptor, and I've just found it works amazing. I had this happen in that second Boros Energy matchup, Not in the Mardu one, but in Boros, I was able to remove the Flage the second game, and it just plays really well that way. And having 2 Stern Scolding in the sideboard, none in the main deck. Spell Snare takes care of the biggest threats. Um, and I keep 1 Consign to Memory in the main deck. This a lot of people would probably disagree with that too, but I just find it useful against a lot of matchups. There's a few where it can whiff, but even then you can discard it to Psychic Frog or something and use it to power up your Murktide. And yeah, Harbinger, I almost never find super great, to be honest. But I am including it just in case I go against. I feel like it's good against Eldrazi. It can be good against other matchups, but sometimes it just completely whiffs, especially since they can tap their lands and kill it on entry. Yeah, and I also only run 3 consigned total. This is because I want to run 2 of a lot of these other things, and also fitting the second surgical is pretty difficult sometimes. I've even considered taking out Nihil Spell Bomb, but it's just too good against Oculus matchups where I feel like I have to keep it. Yeah. Well, thanks for watching again. Yeah, I'll try and post more in the future. I have this is my first commentary of one of these, so I hope I did okay. And see you in the next one.